Welcome to another installment of Deconstructing Babylon, where we discern the truth from the lies of Hollywood Babylon. I found this coffee table book at the thrift store. This is the second volume, and it was published in 1984. It acts as an encyclopedia of sorts of the so-called golden age of Hollywood. And right there on page 6 is a quote from famed occultist Aleister Crowley. Today we are deconstructing the dichotomous, raunchy yet romantic comedy, The Wedding Singer. Released in 98, set in 85, it has 6.9 stars out of 10 on IMDb. That's funny. And the Video Movie Guide gives it 3.5 out of 5. This delightful little love story admirably displays the skills of Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. The setting is 1985, and production designer Perry Andelin Blake has a blast spoofing the entire decade. Every living room, every office is a howling study of day-glow colors run amok, with the clothes and some of the music not much better. Sandler plays a former rock and roller and struggling musician making ends meet as a host/singer at suburban weddings. Barrymore is the perky waitress who catches his eye after he's dumped by his fiancé. Alas, she's engaged, so what's a fellow to do? Rated PG-13. I have got a real problem with the writers of this book. The synopsis isn't at all accurate or complete, but let's deconstruct The Wedding Singer and see what's really going on. The first image we are shown is a bride at her wedding, dancing and celebrating with her bridesmaids. Of course, all the guests are having a wonderful time thanks to their charismatic wedding singer, Robbie Hart. The iconic Steve Buscemi makes a cameo appearance, along with several of the Happy Madison crew we'll see along the way. His best man speech, while cringy AF, is giving preferred second son, which is a familiar biblical narrative. But Robbie rushes to the rescue with a smooth tongue.
That's a good wedding singer.
Robbie's best friend Sammy grossly introduces us to Julia Sullivan, the aforementioned perky waitress. Julia's cousin Holly also works as a waitress, but she's less perky and more horny. Our two leads have their meet cute in an alley by a dumpster.
You're the wedding singer.
This scene is already giving duality. The red and blue background, the black and white of Julia's uniform, these are already indications of Freemasonry. And I hadn't really thought of Adam Sandler being in the Brotherhood, but perhaps he is at some level. Though Robbie and Julia have instant chemistry, they are both engaged to other people. Robbie's nuptials to Linda are impending in a week, but Julia has been affianced for 2 years with no set date.
And if I do ever get married, maybe you'll sing at my wedding.
Robbie's big day arrives, but unfortunately his bride Linda does not. And the wedding singer gets stood up at his own wedding.
Nice day for a white wedding.
Robbie is understandably hurt and confused. These were the days before cell phones, so he doesn't even know where Linda is or how to get a hold of her until she shows up and explains why she didn't walk down the aisle.
I woke up this morning and I realized I'm about to marry a wedding singer.
Meanwhile, in Julia's world, we meet her hubby-to-be, Glenn Gulia, who finally agrees to set a date for them to get married.
And I promise I will give you the most beautiful wedding.
Robbie is meanwhile crushed, heartbroken, and depressed. He's encouraged to go back to work to get his mind off his misery, but when your job is joining newlyweds in their joy, you should probably wait to go back.
You are the worst wedding singer in the world!
Though I have to say, Robbie wearing a matching jacket to the wedding colors is top tier.
Glenn and I set the date, so you have to play our wedding.
Julia and Glenn host an engagement party, even though they've already been engaged for 2 years. Maybe a bridal shower would have been more appropriate, but then Robbie couldn't be there.
You know, it's a shame you won't be doing weddings anymore.
Robbie's a professional and he diversifies. I mean, Glenn would be proud. He is in bonds.
Glenn's in junk bonds.
A bar or bat mitzvah is a man-made Jewish tradition that honors when a Jew turns 13 and is now considered an adult. There is no biblical basis for a celebration like this. Ishmael was 13 when he was circumcised by his father Abraham, and Jesus was almost 13 when he taught in the temple in Jerusalem. Nothing else in God's word points to 13 being the age of adulthood. So Robbie agrees to help Julia with her wedding plans.
How did you become a wedding singer?
And he tells her that he actually desires to be a songwriter and to write a song that truly conveys how he feels. So he's a wedding singer, a wedding planner, a songwriter, and even sometimes a teacher.
Losing his mind.
So what kind of 80s/90s rom-com would this be without a montage? This one is both concise and funny and conveys well the progression of the blossoming relationship. I also happen to believe that Drew Barrymore has the best on-screen chemistry with all of her co-stars.
You should do that at the wedding.
So Glenn shows up with the absolute latest in home studio technology with a compact disc player, the very thing Sony released in 1985. I know the Video Movie Guide raved about the production designer, but I just want to shout out the script supervisor for this kind of accuracy to the age. Anyway, Holly the hoe gets her sights set on Robbie and they go on a double date with Glenn and Julia to a nightclub. Strange, but okay. It's the 80s and they're still young.
Speak for yourself. I'm not too old.
Glenn, being the villain he is, spills his evil plans to Robbie, who really coerces him into this confession. But we learn that Glenn has no intention of remaining faithful to Julia after their wedding.
Once you get married, the party's over, right?
Glenn says he can trust Julia because she's been with him before he made his money. He says he owes her for her faithfulness. Julia can't trust Glenn, and she doesn't even know that. She says she loves him, but we never learn why she wants to marry him.
I mean, I told him why you were marrying him. Then why are you?
And Holly asks the fair question. It's clear Julia isn't with Glenn for his money, but she should examine why she's walking down the aisle to a man who has no intention of taking his vows seriously.
You're marrying Glenn because he's got money.
Before the big day, Julia gets cold feet and confesses to her mom that she caught feelings for another man. She doesn't ever suspect Glenn's infidelity or treachery to their relationship. She just likes how Robbie makes her feel.
You're thinking of leaving Glenn for the wedding singer?
Robbie is completely unaware of Julia's feelings for him and accepts that loving her means desiring her happiness, even if it means she marries Glenn.
Hey, it's a wedding singer.
At Robbie's lowest point, Linda comes back into his life, ready to make amends.
I could learn to deal with the fact that you're just a wedding singer, not a rock star.
Robbie isn't willing to sacrifice his own happiness, though, to be with someone who is only settling for him and has already broken his heart once. Julia is confused now and expedites her wedding to Glenn as they plan to elope in Vegas the day before their wedding, which completely does away with all the plans she made with Robbie. So they weren't planning Julia's wedding to Glenn, after all.
I don't need a big wedding.
Robbie, the White Knight, races to the airport to stop Julia and confess his feelings. And they just so happen to be on the same plane, and this is one of those times when a movie trope works. Robbie serenades Julia at 26,000 feet, climbing to 30,000.
Even let you hold the remote control.
And it ends with a wedding. Maybe the very wedding they were planning all along. Now, at first, even second blush, this movie is pretty fluffy. It's not too deep, it's not too controversial. I'd even wager that it's aged well. It lacks the 90s misogyny that is present in other films and actually makes us feel good about the ending. You may even think that there's no underlying symbolism present. Don't worry, I found some. It's the sun and moon. Again, why is it always the sun and moon? Duality is shown in many ways and takes many forms. The colors blue and red, black and white clothing, the checkerboard, blonde hair and brunette hair, day and night. And just like in the previous review I did on True Lies, here the man is the moon and the woman is the sun. Robbie, the dark-haired moon, does his deeds at night. He lives in a dark basement that is covered with a black and white checkerboard. His mood is volatile. I likened him in my mind to Romeo. I likened a lot of this movie to the Shakespeare tragedy, except for the ending, obviously. Julia is the light-haired sun. Even her car is bright yellow. But she's not just any sun. She's a black hole sun. Throughout the entire movie, Julia/Juliet wears a black hole or corona around her neck. I don't know if it's meant to be a mood stone, but it never changes color. And she doesn't wear it in the last scene when Robbie finally confesses his love. And she doesn't wear it at their wedding. The wedding, which is also how time will wrap up, at the wedding feast of the Lamb, is actually a counterfeit. This one is not a real wedding, but an eclipse. It's the sun and moon crossing paths and not a real marriage. Glengulia is another mystery to unravel, so stay with me. G is the 7th letter of the English alphabet. His initials are GG, or 77. 7 in the Bible is a number of fullness or completeness. On the 7th day of creation, God rested, and when he gave the law to Moses, he blessed the 7th day and made it holy. 7-7 indicates a level of divine fullness and perfect completeness. Jesus instructs his disciple Peter that forgiveness of a brother is more than 7 times, but 70 times 7. Double sevens. Glenn is shown as the capable provider. He's often associated with animal print throughout the film and wears mostly light and pastel colors. His love of money leads him astray from his love for his bride, and he is therefore consistently unfaithful. He is not a representation of God by any means, but rather man. Imperfect, lustful, led by desires of the flesh, animalistic by nature, and rebellious by sin. He's already married to the world, knit to it in his flesh, yet he is made to worship and is tempted in many ways to worship the sun, Julia, and marry himself to her, lest she remove her light from his life. Maybe I'm starting to reach, so I'm going to stop. But I hope it causes you to consider more, to question more, to be more discerning. That's all for me, your discerning neighborhood clerk. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it and a thumbs down if you didn't. Subscribe if you want to, but don't follow me. Follow the only one who saves you. And until the next one, keep looking up.
Good luck finding a DJ who can move and shake like this.